Hi, and welcome back to the channel. So here is some of the important things that I wanted to go over today. I have a whole bunch of content on the details of how the panel's produced and everything, but I wanted to make sure that I did get a few questions from people asking about the panel layouts and why I did it this way and why I did it that way. So I want to walk you through the panel layout. What you see on the screen now is the shed. The shed faces north direction, as you can see up here. Let's see if I can highlight this. Yep, so as you can see, it faces north up here, and this side faces west. There is a building here that obstructs this view until about 10 o'clock when these panels can light up, and about noon before these panels over here have full sun. Then obviously these are in the south, so for the majority of the time during the winter, they're going to have a little bit better view. But in the extreme winter, they do have a little bit of shadowing across the bottom down here. Then on the east side, the RV is parked along this area here. But for the most part, until late in the evening, we do have full sun over here once solar noon passes, which around this time of the year is about 1:20 to 1:30 in the afternoon. So let me explain why I did what I did initially, and then I'll walk through each one of them quickly, and then we'll get on to the rest of this video. So this is kind of a full recap of all the panel layouts. The first panel layout I did was this one here, and it was in 2 series, and as you can see, there are 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parallels. The reason I did this is that I wanted to be able to get all the sun at these at the same time, all of these at the same time, these at the same time, and then separate the east and the west as the sun went from one hemisphere to the other. That is really what I was after. Now, when I noticed that the power, the voltage coming from these panels was over 60 volts, I never gave it a second thought. I didn't review it. I didn't think about it. I'm thinking, okay, it needs to be over 5 volts in order to make it work. But what I didn't think about is that it doesn't give it enough room to really work with it. So what I did next is, after I did this, and that was the first video that you saw, and I'll link it right here right now so that you can go back and watch the first video if you want. Then we went to the next video here, or the next setup. The next setup, I decided I was going to try this in 4 parallel, get the voltage as high as I could get. So I did end up having to add 2 extra panels, as you can see here, a panel here and a panel here. Now, that said, what I originally did is I put 4 panels here and I put 4 panels here, thinking, okay, well, let's just see if this works. It worked extremely well. Obviously, it left these 2 panels sitting over here orphaned, and I thought to myself, well, you know what, if I just add an additional panel, I can put these 4 panels together and get the best results out of it as possible. That is what I did, and that is when I made the video, is after these 4 panels here had been lit up. The idea of these was to check if these 8 would do as well as the original 10. They did, but then I got the idea maybe I can even do better. So I added 2 more doing it this way. Now, that said, and watching the voltage, when the sun came up in the morning and hit these panels, I noticed that the voltage of the MPPT would change to around 88 volts as opposed to the 118 or 119 that it would get once it went into the full solar day. That brought me to thinking maybe this panel being over here wasn't or could help more than I originally thought. Not that these weren't producing quite well, but maybe I could do a format that allowed these to continue to produce the way I wanted them to, but also get these 3 panels into full production somehow for that short period of time between 10 a.m. and noon, which was where I was having the problems. So then I came up with this layout. This layout is what currently this video is made about. This layout talks about, I moved this panel to down here. I swapped them. So when the sun comes up in the morning, it's hitting all 4 of these and these 4 panels, and I get the full effect. And what I'm seeing, the results you'll see later, I go over numbers and statistics and go through all the charts with you and show you the solar home assistant, and it has all the figures and everything. But then in the evening, when the sun starts to go down, these panels have full light also, which didn't affect going from these two to these two, it actually may have made it a little bit better, as this one has a little bit more direct light than this one does. So it may have actually increased the performance of the evening. It certainly extended out the power for longer, but it dramatically increased the morning production also. So the only other item that I have really in my list to try, and this was really thought up of while I was doing the other video, while I was creating this video, would be a fourth layout which has not been done. I haven't even decided if I want to do it. I am curious of what you think about it, if it's even worth the effort. And I highlight in the video why I'm reluctant to do it, because of the cable moving around and the way the panels are attached and everything. So I may do it anyway just to see. This last setup was kind of an idea that I had while I was recording this video, was to put 3 in series from the east and the west, 3 from the top, and 2 from the south and 1 from the top, to see if 3 series 4 parallel as opposed to the 4 series 3 parallel is better. I have a lot of thoughts of maybe this would help, maybe it wouldn't. I'm not sure that it's going to change a whole lot. I do know that it will be a dramatic change on the way the panels are set up and the way they're laid out, and what I would have to disconnect panels and I would have to move things around. So I don't know that I will actually do it, but I find myself saying I don't know if I'm going to actually do it and then end up doing it sometimes anyway. So this is theoretical. It may not ever happen. So the rest of the video has details on the third version of 4 parallel 3 series, with the west, the east separated, as opposed to the random panel separate of this first group that we had up here. Hope you enjoy it. Please like and subscribe, and enjoy the rest.
All right, so now we're recording another video on this. We did this the other day, and I switched this from going from 2 in series and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in parallel, to being 4 in series and going 3 in parallel, and to add it 2 panels. Now let me explain a little bit about why I did this. So when I originally hooked it up, I was under the impression that if I got these 2 panels on the top together and the 2 on the other side together and the 2 over here and the 2 back here and the 2 on the back side over there, that those 2 panels together would have sun at the same time and thus create the most power. Now, what I since learned is that because the voltage was right at the edge of where it needed to be, it was running at 61 volts, the MPPT couldn't adjust the voltage to pull out more watts. So I was losing a lot in that conversion. So what I did is I switched it to a 444. I put these 2 panels over here together with these 2 panels. I put the 4 panels on the roof together, and I took that last panel on that row there and added it to these 3 over here. Now, this made a huge difference. It created a whole lot more power, as you've seen in that video. If you haven't seen that video, then I suggest I'll link it up here in the top somewhere so that you can take a look at it. But now what I'm going to do is I changed it again 2 days ago. And what I did is I took these 4 panels, 1, 2, 3, 4, knowing that when the sun comes up in the morning, comes up over the edge of this building here, it hits these 4 panels and those 4 on the top, and it goes boom and lights up like a Christmas tree. I get tons of power all at the same time. It jumps up in the around 900 to 1,000 watts. Now, is that perfect? No. These 250 watt panels are very old. They're very used. They're not pulling 250 watts. My suspicion is they're pulling about 60 to 70% of that, even in perfect sunlight. Now, I take and I'll include a picture of where I had these laying out on the ground, and they were only creating 1,400 watts then also, even with full sun hitting them. So that's what gives me that impression that they're not really being able to pull that much power. So on this side, I then created this 1 panel with these 3. Now, once that sun comes up, As you can see, we're in that part of the day right now where there really isn't any sun hitting these panels. We have a lot of shading across the top here, and it really hasn't gotten much down into the bottom. It'll start to fill those up with sun. These stay sunny all day. And this one is starting to retract from it. So it's pulling away from this and it's going. Now what's happening, what's really unique about this, is there is a really small dip in production when it switches from this side to that side, because as this side gets weaker, this side gets stronger. And that is kind of balancing it out. There is a small dip in there, and hopefully I can include some statistics and show you that here on the screen. The 4 panels up on the top, they're pretty consistent. But the one thing that I noticed from before, that the largest problem that we were having here isn't that I had 4 panels that didn't have direct light, is that in order to get the right amount of wattage out of these, it needed the voltage to be able to keep the voltage as high as possible. So what was happening before, when it had this 1 panel and the 3 on the other side, is in the morning it would downgrade, the MPPT would downgrade the voltage to around 81, 82 volts. And then as the day went on, as the sun got closer to here in the middle, then it would bump it up into the 110 range. And then when it got to the full sun over here as it's going down, and these 2 and those 2 were both lit up and the roof was lit up, then it would run at the 120. What I'm seeing now is with 2 of the 3 series sets of panels always producing power, or almost always, that we have a little bit of a lull in the afternoon, like right now when the sun is really right here in the middle. It's not lighting up these, and it's not lighting up the ones in the back. And it runs down in the high 90s, low hundreds, but it's still pulling 800, 900 watts because it's getting good balance from both sides of these panels, which was what we saw before in the middle of the day. When everything was kind of lit up, it was doing okay. But now, once this sun passes this point, on the back side of this, before it gets here, it's running at 12, 1300. And once it passes that point, it's running at 12 or 1300. So you see a huge spike in the morning when it goes up over the building, and then it drops down just a tiny bit in noon, as 1:30 or so in the afternoon where we're at now. And then it goes back up over on this side and runs all the way till sundown. Now, sundown is getting very difficult for me to prove because right now we're getting so much solar and the sun is out so much that I'm having a hard time even burning the batteries down far enough to keep it lit all day. Yesterday I had 2 of my heat pumps running on full AC with the windows open, just to try to keep the solar running all day so I could prove what was going on here. It is absolutely true now that those 2. Now, I do have one more test I'm thinking about running. And if you've got any suggestions, please suggest it in the thing. I'm thinking about running a series of 3. So run these 3 from the top, 2 of these plus 1 from the top, and then these 3 over here. Now, the voltage, instead of being where it was originally down in the low 60s, and instead of being where it is now in the 120s to 130s, 130 before you pull anything from it, open line, and then 118, 119 when it is pulling, it would drop down to around 100 when it's pulling and 102, 103 when it's not pulling. I think there's enough room in there to possibly even get a better performance, because what would happen is the 1 panel that I lose here in the early evening, as that's paired with the 3 on the back side, and the 1 panel in the morning that I lose, it's paired with the 3 on this side, I would gain, because all of these 2 plus 1 on the roof would always be lit. The 3 on the roof would always be lit, and the 3 on the side of whatever morning or afternoon I happen to have. That's the theory anyway. Now, I haven't tried that. Now, the only problem I have with that is every time I do this, I'm causing problems like this, where I have the cables being moved around. I have things not bolted on correctly because I have to unbolt them to get to them. I have wires sticking out all over the place. I've had to add panels, those extra ones down there. We had a lot of wind last night, so I had to go in and put some, strap some of those down and put some screws in them just to hold them on so they wouldn't blow down in the middle of the night. And so that's kind of a little bit worrisome. I even had to extend the wood blocks at the bottom. I did have a question about this. So a lot of the weights is sitting on this bottom piece down here. This 2x4 runs across both supports down at the bottom. And so there is no weight on the shed other than it leaning against it, with the exception of the panels on the roof. Now, the panels on the roof, these primary connectors here are screwed into the primary studs of the frame inside. And the top is not, it's just screwed in and just held up there. But the weight support for this shed is in excess of 400 pounds for snow weight. Now, the panels themselves weigh about 40 pounds, which means I have 160 pounds of panels sitting on the roof, of which most is sitting on the support beam. And I don't think it's an issue. I am in Florida. I have no snow. I have hurricanes and a lot of wind. So that's my only real concern is when a hurricane comes, how confident am I that the shed would even be here, let alone the panels themselves. So that's something I'm going to have to think about and deal with. But just wanted to let everyone know this is the idea now. I know this is producing more. We're up again another 2 to 4K in production. And if I can get the batteries ran down enough, I thought I was going to have a shady day today. As it turns out, my batteries peaked out early. We're sitting at 100% right now. So that said, here is, I'm going to go in and get on the laptop and see if I can give you guys some statistics and show you what I'm seeing. And we will overlap that with some of this and hopefully get a couple questions from you guys. And I'll be glad to try some other things that we've got. But I'm not sure about the 3 panels, if that will work. And I'm not sure really that with it being 4 right now and 4 here, that the alternating this one extra panel is going to make much of a difference. I'm not sure it's worth all the extra effort. What I might do is trim down the top to be 3 panels and the 2 sides to be 3 panels and just see how much difference, how much they actually generate, to see if it's even going to be closely competitive to what I already have. I'm not sure that it will be, but you know, I've made some assumptions before, and these panels seem to amaze me each time. And like I said, these are not new panels. These are old panels. They're very old, and they're 250 watt. I think they're Canadian solar panels, and they're 250 watts. But they are not producing at 250 watts. I'll throw some statistics in here and show you kind of what they're producing. I would suspect that it's about 60% would be maximum straight on full power if they were sitting direct sun and stringed together correctly. And I know this is not strung together correctly. This is an experiment of how do you get more space when you don't have any space? How do you get more panels when you don't have any room for? How do you get more panels when you're not allowed to have anything that isn't mounted to your RV or to your shed? And that is the case with me right now. So please like and subscribe. We'll follow this up. When I get inside, I get the computer out, and we'll see if we can do some statistics and answer some more of your questions there. I appreciate you a lot. Thanks for coming. We'll see you next time. All right. We're going to run a little fun test here and take a look at, back on the 25th, the solar setup was 2S 5P, meaning there was 2 panels in series and 5 paralleled, done like that. There was the 2 in the back of the shed, the 2 on the west side of the shed, the 2 on the east side of the shed, and the west side, 2 on the top on the west side and 2 on the top on the east side. That produced this chart here, as you can see, pulling in power each day around 600 in the morning. It would dip off in the afternoon as it switched from the 2 series on the left, 2 series on the east to the 2 series on the west. And it would struggle when it had low power in any particular space because the voltage was running at about 30.5 volts per panel. Now, if you put 30.5 volts per panel, it's 61 volts if it runs at full power. And this is where the problem comes in. These are older panels. They're not performing great, but when it starts to pull that power, it could only get a little bit of power because it's charging a 48-volt battery, which means it was sitting at 54, 55 volts. It had very little room for the MPPT to to point out the right power spot for it to extract power. It needed a little bit of room to do it. You can also see the afternoon, and this will be significant later when we look at this. The afternoon, after the sun started going down, really just kind of dwindled away to almost nothing. Surprisingly, though, in this area here, the sun was really, really shining in these panels. And so what was hurting, I think, in the morning and in the afternoon is the multiple low voltage 2 series. And I don't know that for sure, but it sure seems like it was unable to recover from that power loss when those weren't able to pull the power that it needs. Now, that said, we're going to move here to the 26th. And on the 26th, I basically changed the panels to be 4 in series and 3 paralleled. Now, that said, you got to remember, in order to do such, you have to add some panels because that went from 10 panels to 12 panels. So you'll notice that here, this is the 4 series only for the 4 on the top and the 2 in the back and 2 on the west side. I did not have the other 4 panels installed until this area down here. So after I installed them down here, we will see on the next morning really the recovery there. But as you can see, it was blatantly obvious, which is why I went ahead and over here installed some additional panels. It was blatantly obvious, and this is where I made the other video, that this was much better. It was performing much, much better already. We were at 900 here. It was maintaining all day. When the sun started to go down, I could see clearly that I was going to have no problems whatsoever with the panels. You can see here I unplugged 1 string of them, did some work on it, shut the whole thing down, and then brought it back up with all of the panels installed here. So, but you can see here our peak is up in the, why does it do that? There we go. Our peak is, around 1,050, 1,061. Our middle of the afternoon is 827. And really pretty much the morning never really got off to anything above 930 or so. Not bad, tremendously better than it had been before, without a question. There was no debate that it was tremendously better. So I let this ride, and we went into the next morning. And as you can see here, wait for this to reload. The next morning, everything came up as it should. It immediately, as hit before the sun even came over. Now, keep in mind, the sun comes over the top of the building right here at about 10, 11, or 12 o'clock. When it did that, it lit this thing up like a Christmas tree. It basically took off like mad. Now, keep in mind, 1 panel on this side is still on the west side of the shed. So you have one panel on the west side, you have 3 panels on the east side. So you really never saw this go to a full power like you would see over here, where you have 4 panels getting direct sunlight on the top and 4 panels, 2 in the back and 2 on the west side. So over here you have 1 west side and 3 east side. So that's really where you see this stubbornness until around noon, when all of a sudden both sides of the panels start to get a fair amount of light. The top ones are performing really well, and then as that sun shifts in the afternoon and starts hitting those panels on the west side and the back side, this starts to skyrocket and brings us up into the higher elevations of PV collection way up here in this. Wish I could get rid of the stupid way that thing displays stuff. That is very annoying. But it's way up there in the 1100, around 1100 range. 1107, there we go. So much, much better, but still not consistently up in the 1000, 1200 range, except for this short window in the early afternoon when it was hitting. This got me to thinking, how can I get 4 panels, other than the 4 on the top, to get sun for longer periods of time than just this small window here? Could I get some panels in the morning to get the sun and some panels in the night? So what I decided to do was to switch the 4 panels, the 2 sets of 4 panels, the 2 parallel panel sets of 4 on the side, to being 3 on the west, 3 on the east, and both of them getting 1 on the north side or on the south side. This would cause, I was hoping this would cause, as soon as it came up over that morning sun came up over the buildings around 10 o'clock, that there would be a spike on this side and then it would continue on this side. Now, I wasn't sure that was what was going to happen, but you can see from this clearly this is exactly what happened at 10 o'clock in the morning. It shot straight up. Now, we had a lot of clouds this day, but you can also see these spikes are considerably higher. This was a very well producing day. And then when it settled down, that said, it was still in the 900s. So it produced up, 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 up after 10 o'clock, and it ran all the way up to a peak here pretty consistently into the 1200s. Now, it maintained over 1,000 all the way through the switchover of the afternoon, back to the other panels, and all the way back to about 4:30, 5 o'clock. That is a long time where we were able to get from the morning panels to take over, to start producing um, power, the sun in the middle to get a little bit from both sides, and then the sun on the west side to take over completely. There was absolutely no question this was the right way to do it. Now, that said, we carry that into today, and we look at what we have here today, and you're going to see that I ran out. Batteries just plain blank full today. Yesterday was a bumper day. There was no way for me to even come close to competing with that. The cloud cover was horrible today, but even that said, if you look at what was going on in this morning out here, there is no question that this was building all day, even in cloudy situations. And we really didn't start getting sun until this afternoon. So this day really doesn't count. But what's important here is to show that there was still a continued growth above 900 from 11 o'clock or so on. And you can see here, this is all cloud cover. I mean, cloud cover was terrible today. So for this to still be here, and us to get full batteries when we got here, this is when the clouds started to move out. And when they started to move out, they pulled out all the things, and then boom, we hit full batteries, and nothing really happens. These spikes are nothing more than me making a coffee, or the hot water heater running, or something that allowed it to produce a bunch of power. But you can see clearly this power in even at 3 in the afternoon is 1300, 1400 in the afternoon. So there is no question that what we saw on the 28th is going to be a fairly consistent performance. It's going to start early in the morning, right after the 10 o'clock thing. It'll start to build. It'll crescendo up into the over 1,000 by 11 o'clock or so, and it's going to hold that until well into the afternoon at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So that is the conclusion, is that definitely works. Now the question is, and here's where I'm debating whether I even want to go to this extent to do this, is would I be better off, instead of doing 4 in series and 3 in parallel, to go 3 in series and 4 parallel? And the way I would do that is do 3 on the west side, 3 on the east side, 3 from the roof, and 2 from the back or the south side, and 1 from the roof to make the fourth parallel set in those things. I don't know that we were going to get much better performance than we've got here, but I have to say some of the results that I've got here make sense while we're getting them, but yet they still surprise me how dramatic they are. Just how massive of a difference this made from the one we had before of moving a simple panel from one side of the shed to the other. We were able to create almost 3 extra kilowatts a day. So that said, I appreciate you watching. Thanks for everything that you do. Please provide any feedback down below. Let me know what you're thinking. Let me know what I missed. Let me know what mistakes I made. Let me know how I can make it better. Keep in mind, this is not about getting the most performance out of these panels as I can. Laying them at a perfect angle, perfectly in the right direction, perfectly all that. Anybody can do that. This is about, I only am allowed to mount these panels either on my RV, which I already have 370 watt 10 370 watt panels on my RV, or on my fixed shed. So I don't have the flexibility of putting in things to pop them up in the air, or to make them angled, or lay them on the ground, or change the way the arrangement is. The 12 panels that I have pretty much is all the 12 that'll fit, and it's the only way I can do it. Now the question becomes, what is the best way to arrange them to get the most power? Keep in mind also, summer is approaching here. We're getting a lot of power in the morning and a lot of power at night. And I don't have a whole lot of trees around here, but the buildings do play part of that. In the winter, there are some buildings to the south that cause those south panels to act up. So I may find that the 3-panel solution works better in the winter than it does in the summer, and it may be worth doing for that purpose only. But there's only one way to know, and that's to wait for the next winter and try it then, if I'm even still here and in this location. For that, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. Love to see you back. Love to hear your comments, and talk to you on the next video.